All Blacks vs England, Yokohama Stadium, 2019. In this video, I'm going to cover why I think that was the greatest ever game that we've ever had between the two nations ever in the history of the game. Look, in this video, I'm going to cover before the game, the theatre, etc., what happened during the game that made it just such a brilliant spectacle, and then why at the end I think it was the greatest ever game of rugby ever played between the two nations. Before it in 2019, the theatre was just simply amazing, wasn't it, guys? Like, you had Eddie Jones at the helm of England and what he'd been able to do for England in the years leading up to 2019 was just amazing, wasn't it? Like, the success that England had had in the Six Nations, their performances, the way that England had moved from sort of more a set-piece dominated sort of rugby side to their attacking intent and their ability to shift the ball. Yeah, really amazing. And before the game, you know, the theatre with Eddie Jones putting pressure on the All Blacks, etc. And you just knew that Eddie Jones was probably only sleeping 3 hours a night, just absolutely gunning for this game to win it. Back then as well, the All Blacks were a pretty good side. They weren't as vulnerable as they have been in previous years from, 2020 onwards. So I did think before the game, I thought that it would be pretty close, but I still expected the All Blacks to win it, probably by 5 points. I just thought they'd get a runaway try or something to that extent and end up winning the game against England. Wowee, the start. I thought the start would be pretty important, and I just thought, look, if the All Blacks had been winning 21-0 at 20 minutes in, it would probably decide the game. But the start was just amazing, wasn't it, guys? Particularly, you remember that V shape that they presented against the haka. And then you had Owen Farrell with that filthy smirk at the end of the V, just facing up to the haka. Guys, let me know your thoughts on that. But, Owen Farrell got a lot of flack online for not showing respect or whatever to the haka. I didn't think anything of it about respect. I actually thought it was great that they'd done this V, that Owen Farrell, was facing up to the haka. And I know I've faced up against the Huckers before, and it's presenting a challenge. So the way that Owen Farrell, gave that grin back, he knew he's presenting the challenge right back at the All Blacks. Absolutely fantastic, guys, I thought anyway. Look, the match, wowee, that start from England. I don't think I've ever seen them play such quick rugby. Particularly, in that first 2 minutes, there was that line out thrown in by Jamie George. And just a couple of just brutal ball carries by the English forwards, just completely obliterated the All Blacks. The All Blacks didn't even know what had hit them. And then the forwards just kept getting over the advantage line, and then they did that ball out the back, out wide to Elliot Daly, who just completely skinned Richie Mo'unga on the outside, and they made a break about 30 metres up the right wing. Just crazy. And then again, they just spun the ball, another couple of carries, just dominating the All Blacks physically, spun the ball wide. And look, the English side was beating the All Blacks at the All Blacks game of playing running rugby. They were just skinning them with the speed of their attack. Ultimately, that first try within 2 minutes to Manu Tuilagi, 7-0 up to England, and wow, I've never seen England start so well. And then look, that first half, the All Blacks, multiple times, they knew the rush defence was coming from England, but multiple times they'd get the ball wide and that England defence would come out wide and they just suffocated them, didn't they? Just so many times, at least 4 or 5 from my memory. The All Blacks would get the ball wide and then it just shut them down. There'd be a turnover to England, another turnover. And even if you remember in that game, there was that one pretty good break to Brodie Retallick up the middle, a couple of offloads. But even then, a couple more offloads and the All Black player, got bundled into touch by about 4 or 5 English defenders in the 22. Like, a break like that, it just completely suffocated the All Blacks, didn't they? Look, halftime scored 10-0 to England. I thought that, yep, that's a decent lead, but at that scoreline, I still thought the All Blacks could come back in the second half, score a couple of tries and win the game. Look, what was amazing about that game though, for me though, was, a lot of test matches, a side plays well for 30, 40 minutes, but then they play averagely for the remainder of the game. England just played fantastic from 0 to 80 minutes. They were just relentless and just completely dominated the All Blacks, didn't they? And even that second half, like the All Blacks were just really trying to get the ball wide and really attack the English to score some tries. And again, they just suffocated them again and again and again. I've never seen such an amazing defensive effort by England. And even when the All Blacks scored, there was that try off the line-out by Jamie George. Just a mistake by Jamie George, an overthrow caught by Artie Sevilla and a try to the All Blacks. To be honest, that was the only try that they ever were going to score in that game. They weren't going to breach that English defence. Look, full-time score 19.7 to England in the game, and even that scoreline probably doesn't really reflect how much England dominated the All Blacks in that game. Look, there was 2 disallowed tries, one in the first half to Sam Underhill, and then in the second half to Ben Youngs. Look, if England easily could have scored another 14 points, and that scoreline with 14 more points would be an absolute domination against the All Blacks. I think what was amazing about this game though from me, look, after the game, and guys, let me know your thoughts on where you were in the world after this game, for England supporters, were you at a bar celebrating, or please add that in the comments. For All Black supporters, where were you watching the game? What were your opinions on the game, and what did you do to recover after such a sad loss? For me though, what I think was amazing about this game was Eddie Jones's book, when he mentions it, guys. And look, for those who haven't read it, that fantastic book by Eddie Jones, I do thoroughly recommend reading it. But up until 2019, when the All Blacks, they were a quality side and they weren't as vulnerable as they are now. Eddie Jones made a comment that up until then, in his days of coaching the Wallabies, he made a comment that you never really beat the All Blacks. It's just that the All Blacks run out of time to beat you. And Eddie Jones says in his book, he felt that day England beat the All Blacks. And look, you have to agree, guys. Like, England dominated the All Blacks in that game from start to finish and thoroughly deserved to win the match. Look, finally, guys, that is the greatest ever game that I can recall in the last 30, 35 years between the All Blacks and England. I've never seen England play so well in a number of areas. Firstly, on their attack, their relentless speed and raw physicality. And I don't think I've ever seen the English side do so well at the breakdown. They just obliterated the All Blacks in so many areas. That's the best I've ever seen England play. But for me, it's the greatest game ever between the two sides because of the quality of the match. Guys, let me know your thoughts on this match. Add some comments underneath the video. Please like, subscribe, and feel free to share the video. Can't wait for some belting test matches later in the year. Cheers.